I never used to believe in cursed places. To me, a forest was just trees, quiet, peaceful, predictable. That was before the summer of 2019, when my friend Jonah and I decided to hike into the Black Pine Wilderness in northern Montana. I never used to believe in cursed places. To me, a forest was just trees, quiet, peaceful, predictable. That was before the summer of 2019, when my friend Jonah and I decided to hike into the Black Pine Wilderness in northern Montana. Jonah was one of those adrenaline junkies, always chasing remote trails, climbing cliffs, posting pictures of himself dangling off ledges with that stupid grin. Me? I just wanted a weekend away from screens and noise. We planned a 4-day trek deep into the woods, camping off-trail, exploring some old fire watchtower we'd read about online. We started hiking. By evening, the light got thick and gold, and the trail narrowed into dense trees. I started feeling weirdly watched, like the forest was listening. It wasn't paranoia yet, just that quiet, ancient heaviness you feel when nature doesn't want you there. When we stopped for the night, Jonah made a fire, and I went to gather sticks. That's when I found the first thing. It was a bone. Not big, maybe a deer's leg, but it was wrapped in twine and hanging from a branch about 6 feet off the ground. The bone was clean, polished, like someone had carved symbols into it. I called Jonah over. He just laughed. "Probably some hunter marking a trail," he said. But hunters don't carve symbols. That night I woke up around 3 a.m. to the sound of footsteps, slow, crunching steps circling the tent. I thought it was Jonah at first, maybe going to pee, but when I whispered his name, he answered from inside the tent. We both froze. The steps stopped. Then we heard breathing right outside the fabric. Long, wet breaths. Jonah whispered, "Don't move." Something dragged across the side of the tent, a fingertip, or maybe a stick. We didn't even unzip it. We just waited until the sound faded. At sunrise, we looked outside. Nothing. No prints, no trash, no broken branches. But right where the sound had stopped, someone had hung another bone charm, freshly tied, still damp with something dark. Jonah wanted to turn back. I didn't blame him, but the map showed we were close to the old tower, maybe 2 hours away. We decided to finish the hike, stay one night at the tower, and then head out. That hike was dead quiet. No birds, no wind, not even the sound of insects. We passed an old sign half buried in moss that read, "Danger Restricted Area, Black Pine Research Grounds." Jonah said the tower must have been part of it. I said, "Research? What kind?" He shrugged. "Don't know. Maybe logging or weather stuff." But when we found the tower, it didn't look like any ranger station I'd ever seen. It was metal, not wood, and surrounded by a collapsed fence. The windows were all covered with steel shutters, and the air smelled faintly like ozone. We climbed up anyway. Inside was a single room with a cot, a small generator, and a wall covered in maps filled with red circles and numbers. On the table sat a tape recorder and a stack of cassettes. Jonah popped one in. A man's voice crackled through. "It moves between the trees. It mimics sound now. Stay quiet. If you hear your own name, don't answer." Jonah stopped the tape. We just stared at each other. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the tower made my chest tighten. Then, around midnight, I heard a voice, Jonah's voice, whispering from outside. "Hey, come down." I found something. I turned to look. Jonah was asleep on the cot, and outside, under the moonlight, I saw movement. A figure stood by the fence. Its posture was wrong, too still. It tilted its head like it was listening. Then it said again, in Jonah's exact voice, "Come down." It's safe I didn't move, didn't breathe, and after a while, it just melted back into the trees. By morning, Jonah said he hadn't heard a thing. But when we went outside, we found more of those bone charms, dozens of them, hanging from the fence, twisting in the wind. That's when Jonah lost it. He said we needed to run, not hike, run all the way back. I agreed. But when we looked at the map, it didn't make sense anymore. The landmarks were different. The compass spun like crazy. Every direction we walked in, we somehow ended up back at the tower. The forest had trapped us. No matter which way we turned, we came full circle, the tower standing there like it was waiting. By the second night, we were both exhausted and starving. Our food was running out, and neither of us could keep track of how long we'd actually been awake. The light never seemed to change. It was always that same gray dusk, thick with fog that swallowed everything past 20 feet. I started writing down what was happening just so I'd know it was real. The dates, the direction we walked, the sounds we heard. Each time I wrote the time, my watch would tick backwards for a few seconds, then stop. Jonah was pacing by the door. He said he could hear something moving in the fog, whispering his name in my voice. He wasn't joking. His face was pale, trembling. "I keep hearing you say, 'Come out,'" he said. "I didn't say that," I told him. We locked the door that night and sat by the lantern, barely speaking. Around 1 a.m., something knocked on the metal stairs, one slow clang at a time. Jonah grabbed his knife and I killed the light. The sound stopped halfway up. Then the stairs groaned like someone was crouching there, waiting. Jonah whispered, "Who's there?" And that same voice, my voice, answered from the dark, "It's me." We didn't move for hours. When dawn came, the door was still locked, untouched. But muddy handprints covered the glass, as if something had leaned against it, just listening. That morning, Jonah said he couldn't stay another night. We packed everything and started walking again. Any direction didn't matter. The fog was thicker than before, clinging to our faces like wet fabric. After maybe an hour, we saw a shape, a cabin. Relief hit so hard it hurt. We ran toward it. The door was half open, and inside, everything was covered in dust. A broken lantern, 2 cots, a cracked photo frame. Inside the frame was a picture of 2 men, both wearing ranger jackets. One of them looked exactly like Jonah. He stared at it for a long time, silent. "That's impossible," he whispered. The back of the photo had a date, July 14th, 1997. Jonah wasn't even born then. On the table sat a journal. Most of the pages were torn out, but the last entry read, "The forest doesn't want us to leave. It uses our voices to bring us back. Don't answer yourself." Then came a soft scrape against the window. We froze. Something was circling the cabin. Slow, dragging steps in the wet leaves. Jonah whispered, "Don't move." The thing stopped right by the door and knocked 3 times. The handle started to turn, inch by inch. Jonah lunged forward, slammed the deadbolt, and whatever was out there slammed back, once, twice, then silence. We could see a slit of light through the door frame. Something was standing right on the porch, its shadow cutting across the candlelight. Then it leaned down to the keyhole and whispered in Jonah's voice, "Let me in." I'm cold. We hid under the cot, shaking, trying not to breathe. Minutes passed, then hours. Finally, when the light outside began to fade, the door creaked open on its own. No footsteps, no sound. Just the door swinging inward. Outside was the forest again, dark, endless, waiting. The fog had cleared, but somehow it felt worse, like the trees were leaning closer, listening. Jonah whispered, "I think it's letting us out." But I wasn't so sure. We walked until our legs went numb. The forest was silent again. No birds, no wind, just that soft hum in the air, like electricity. Jonah said we should head east, but every direction looked the same. The trees were black now, not green, their bark split open like burned skin. After hours of wandering, we stumbled onto a road, cracked asphalt disappearing into moss. Ahead stood a gate wrapped in vines, with a rusted sign that read, "Black Pine Research Facility, closed since 1998. It wasn't a ranger site. It was something else entirely. The gate hung half open, one hinge squealing softly in the wind. We squeezed through, calling out. Nothing answered. Behind it were a few concrete buildings half swallowed by trees. Inside one, we found overturned desks, scattered papers, and a faint smell of ozone again. Jonah picked up a clipboard with faded text. Subject recordings, audio mimicry response phase. Phase 4, failed containment. He looked at me. Audio mimicry? Like the voice thing? We found a sealed glass chamber in the next room. The glass was cracked from the inside, smeared with dark stains. A sign on the door said, "Do not engage. Responds to sound." Jonah stepped closer, and that's when we heard it. A low, wet breathing echoing through the vents. We turned off our lights and froze. The breathing stopped. Then from somewhere deeper in the building, my own voice echoed back, "Jonah, run!" It wasn't me. We bolted down the hallway. Doors slammed on their own as we ran, one after another, like something was chasing us from the dark. Jonah shouted my name, but his voice came from behind me, even though he was ahead. Something darted across the corridor, tall, thin, and fast, just a blur, but enough to make my stomach drop. We burst through the exit door into daylight, if you could call it that. The sky was gray, heavy, the forest stretched in every direction. No trail, no tower, nothing familiar. Jonah stopped. His face was pale, blank. I grabbed his arm. He didn't react. Then, in a voice that wasn't his, he said, "It remembers you." His eyes rolled back white. He started whispering words I didn't understand, guttural sounds that scraped his throat raw. Then he smiled, wide and wrong. That's when I ran. Branches tore at my clothes as I sprinted through the trees. Every sound in the forest echoed back at me in my own voice. "Stop running! Help me! Look behind you!" When I finally stopped, panting and bleeding, I looked up. And there it was again, the tower. Exactly where it had been on the first night. Only this time, the lights inside were on. I climbed up, shaking. The same tape recorder was waiting on the desk. Only now the tape was already playing. The voice on it was mine. If you're hearing this, it means it got Jonah. It mimics what it kills. Don't answer yourself, don't. The tape cut off mid-sentence. I looked out the window and saw movement. Dozens of figures, standing just inside the tree line. Some looked like me. Some looked like Jonah. All perfectly still. And then, from behind me, my own voice whispered, "Don't turn around." If you ever hike near Black Pine and the forest suddenly goes quiet, listen carefully. If you hear your own voice calling from the trees, don't answer. Which story scared you the most? Comment below and subscribe for more true horror stories.